Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Anime After Hours with your host, the anime student. Today we're going to be talking about an anime called Romantic Killer, which was, I believe, a Netflix exclusive, or at least that's why I watched it, and every promotional fucking trailer or poster I can find for this show has Netflix on it, so I'm just going to say that Netflix produced it, argue with the wall. Romantic Killer follows the main character, Anzu, who is basically an incel, a femcel, sorry. She spends her life playing video games, eating chocolate, and fawning over her cat, so, pretty femcel behaviour. She has no interest in romance, unlike girls her age, because she's in high school. Basically, she plays this 3D game, and a wizard called Riri comes from the game and says, you're a bit of a femcel. We need to do something about this. Let's make your real life into a dating game harem, or I suppose it's reverse harem technically, in real life. So, in order to help this, Riri confiscates her cat, video games, chocolate, and sends her parents away so that, things can happen. And basically, Anzu then starts engaging with various boys for this harem to happen. The main boy in this scenario, or at least the first one, is a guy called Tsukasa, who is, this charming guy who all the women at school want, but he doesn't want. He's like nonchalant dreadhead, he doesn't want women. But maybe Anzu will be different. And the second boy that is fighting for her heart is a guy called Junta. Now, Junta is brainwashed almost into believing he was, and everyone around them is brainwashed into believing that they were childhood friends. He's the athletic guy, and obviously it's like the boy next door stereotype. There's that childhood connection, so that's why they're like fated to be together almost. And then the final boy, to provide some competition, is Hijiri, who is the rich boy who has no interest in the commoner behaviour, but this commoner is one he'll make an exception for. Now, each of the boys in this, we're going to move away from Anzu because we already know she's a femcel, but each of the boys in this show are very interesting, and I love the character development we get from all of them. Tsukasa especially, we sort of get fed tidbits throughout the show, but it basically comes to the light that because he's such an attractive male, according to the show, by the way, I don't want to get done for nonsense on high school boys. According to the show, he's a very attractive male, and at his previous school he had to move into an apartment and away from the school because he had a stalker known as Yukana Kishi, I believe that's her name, don't quote me on that. But Tsukasa has this sort of trauma related to that. He's constantly watching over his shoulder. He's very nervous in public places in case this woman shows up, which she does at some point, and tries to harm Anzu, and he steps in like the bad boy he is, and he's like, "Get away from my wife!" Bash! That was a very interesting storyline. The stalker storyline, great. I really liked his character development as he goes from this really social, it's like not socially awkward, but very socially anxious guy to he finally comes out of his shell thanks to Anzu's help. And I think even if they don't get together, I'm not going to spoil it yet, what happens at the end, he's had a positive character development, and that's what I like to see in a harem show, or a reverse harem technically. The fact that they are not just objects and they actually have personality. Yes. So Junta, his character development, he goes from being purely focused on baseball and, being, I suppose, blindly in love with Anzu to, being more confident. He to be fair, out of the three, has the sort of weakest character development, to be honest. But I quite like Junta's character. He is a bit awkward because, of course, and he sort of comes out of his shell almost like Tsukasa. I think the best character development, but I already saw it come in, is with Hijiri. Now Hijiri himself, obviously rich boy, like I say, he sort of mellows out a bit. He's very much like, I don't know if you've ever watched Psyche K, but the rich guy from there, I can't remember his name. I'll put a photo of him up now. But he's very much like that in the sense he's very snobby, and he's very like the way they meet is she accidentally walks in front of his car, and he's like, why were you walking in front of my car, blah blah blah, you know, one of those like, not oh you hurt, it's ugh, disgusting, disgusting povo. But Hijiri goes from being this very snobby guy to because he mellows out. He's very humble. He works at the 7-Eleven with Anzu to get a sort of taste for what like povo life is like, and I think he becomes very understanding as a person when he realizes that not everybody has it handed to them on a plate, like he did. And I think one of the funnier characters in the show is his bodyguard, Tsuchiya, I believe is his name, who's voiced by the great Kenjiro Tsuda, which, if you don't know, he voices my favourite Kento Nanami, and also Kishibe from Chainsaw Man, which is a very... and Tatsu from Way of a House Husband, which is another good show. He also voices Kaiba in Yu-Gi-Oh! Anyway, back to the main thing that we're talking about here, Romantic Killer. But he sort of thanks Anzu, Tsuchiya, thanks Anzu for sort of allowing Hijiri to become more mellow, and it's very wholesome. That he just starts to treat Tsuchiya, his bodyguard, with a lot more respect as well, after he realises like people have feelings and they're not just like objects of money. But you know, I've hinted at it long enough. But the ending of this show is very interesting. Riri, the wizard thing, basically sacrifices herself in order to restore everything, and right when you think it's over and done with, Anzu, being the femcel she is, basically rings up the wizard agency and it's like, you've wrongfully imprisoned somebody here, mate, can you let her out? And she becomes part of the high school, and she doesn't pick anybody. I think we're all leaning towards Tsukasa because he basically lives with her at this point. And but I think it's one of those where it's like up to whatever you want the ending to be. If you want her to get with Junta, she'll get with Junta. You want her to get with Hijiri, she'll get with Hijiri after the credits roll. I think that Tsukasa is probably the best fit for her. But I think it's one thing I really do like about this anime is that it leaves it ambiguous, because I hate it. For example, with an anime like Toradora, like I spoke with last week, where it forces a set couple on you, which is objectively wrong. If they'd have fixed her with Junta, I'd have been pissed. I'm not a Junta hater for reference, but I just think he's probably like, he's just not. He's just not the guy. You're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy. I think he's cool though. You know, he's I think he's like I think out of the three, he's the only character that had genuine feelings for Anzu, without Riri getting involved, because they were childhood friends and she sort of was friends with him when he was a bit fat and nerdy, rather than being like the baseball hottie that he is now. So that's what he has going for him, but personally I don't buy that. What are the problems I have with this anime? That is a good question. The soundtrack wasn't really that memorable. Like, if you ask me to think about the soundtrack, it just nothing's there. I cannot think of anything related to this soundtrack. I'm probably going to go listen to it after this video, and it'll be like the best thing I've ever listened to ever. I think what probably also brought it down is the ending was a bit weird. I mean, I thought it was funny, the fact that she basically got like put in wizard jail, and then had to be let out. But you know, I thought it was a bit weird. I think it was also a bit strange for an anime to end without a romance anime to end without there being a set couple. But I did quite like that. It was very concise in the 12 episodes. It didn't feel like it was too long or anything like that. So I do think it's a good 7 out of 10. It didn't break the mold for romance animes. It is a parody, obviously. It is getting at, it is, you know, making jest at the reverse harem trope, or harem or romance tropes, and, you know, visual novel tropes, which I quite like, that comedy aspect. But I do think that it is lacking in certain areas. Like, there probably was more elements of the story that could have been expanded on, or just sort of the plot devices such as her parents disappearing, which were like, oh yeah, okay, I suppose that's very convenient that Riri can do that, and and things like that. But I'd overall would probably give it a 7 out of 10, and I'd recommend you watch it. It's 12 eps. It's on Netflix. Very accessible to watch if you don't, use illegal websites like me. And it is, if you don't enjoy romance animes, you'll probably enjoy this one because it is satirical and it takes the piss out of them. But that's all for me on this episode of Anime After Hours. If there are any animes you want me to review, leave them in the comments. There are some main channel videos in the works. That's all I'm going to say because, you know what I'm like, they may not get posted. But, keep an eye out for more Anime After Hours videos on this channel soon as possible. Peace out.